There's a truth that every man learns the hard way. The more you do for a woman who doesn't respect you, the less she values you. It's not because kindness is wrong or because generosity makes you weak. It's because effort without boundaries becomes servitude. And when a woman senses that your self-respect depends on her approval, she stops seeing you as a man she admires and starts seeing you as a man she can manage. Respect is not something you earn by doing more. It's something you maintain by doing less for those who take it for granted. A high-value man understands this instinctively. His energy, time, and attention are currencies he spends wisely. He knows that every action sends a signal about his worth, and that overgiving to the wrong woman is the fastest way to make her forget his value. Most men think they can win love by proving themselves, by showing loyalty, by being endlessly available. But what they're really doing is teaching her that she can take without giving, that she can disrespect boundaries and still be rewarded with effort. The moment she learns that lesson, attraction begins to fade. Not because she's cruel, but because she's human. We don't cherish what we don't have to earn. You can't inspire admiration by giving everything away. You do it by creating contrast through restraint, self-control, and discipline. That's what separates a man of value from a man of need. A high-value man never acts from fear. He doesn't do things for a woman just to avoid losing her. He does things because they align with his principles. He knows that when respect is gone, no amount of effort can replace it. He understands that silence, distance, and standards speak louder than any act of devotion. Because a woman's respect isn't built through constant giving. It's built through consistency, confidence, and emotional composure. When a woman sees that you can care deeply, yet remain unmoved by disrespect, she feels something she doesn't feel around ordinary men. She feels admiration. In this video, we'll uncover 7 things high V value you men never do for women who don't respect them. 7 mistakes that make strong men lose their power, their confidence, and their emotional balance. These aren't rules born out of arrogance or bitterness. They're lessons written in silence and experience. Because every man who's been taken for granted knows that the cost of disrespect is not heartbreak, it's self-betrayal. So if you've ever found yourself doing too much, giving too freely, or loving too loudly for someone who didn't honor you, this message is for you. It's not about revenge. It's about realignment, about learning that sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is nothing at all. Before we start the video, I want to remind you that my effective online course on mastering the dating game is available now. If you've been learning from my YouTube videos, you're only scratching the surface. This course takes things to an entirely new level, teaching you everything you need to know about the dating game, from approaching a woman to building real attraction. And you won't find this information in any video on my channel. It's available in both English and Spanish language, so you can learn in the language you feel most comfortable with. It's easy to access with a secure payment option. Visit thestoiccouple.podia.com or click the link in the description to enroll now and improve your dating life. Let's dive in. Number 1. They never chase attention that disrespects their. They never chase attention that disrespects their peace. A high-value man understands something that takes most men years to learn. Attention isn't validation, it's noise. Not every woman who looks your way deserves your focus, and not every reply deserves your energy. The world is full of people addicted to the game of control. They feed on reactions, not connections. A woman who disrespects your peace will test you with silence, sarcasm, or subtle jabs. Not because she hates you, but because she wants to see if she can move you. Every time you respond emotionally, she wins. Every time you chase that flicker of attention, you trade your peace for a momentary illusion of relevance. But a high-value man doesn't need to prove he's unbothered. He simply is. He knows that the man who can't control his attention becomes a servant to anyone who can capture it. When a woman starts to disrespect you, when she takes days to reply, mocks your effort, or treats your consistency as desperation, that's not your cue to try harder. It's your signal to step back. You see, chasing her attention doesn't make her like you more. It makes her realize you like her more than you respect yourself. And once that happens, the dynamic shifts forever. She no longer sees strength, she sees dependency. Women might be drawn to confidence, but they test for certainty. Certainty means you don't seek validation from those who don't value it. It means you can walk away without hesitation the moment your peace feels threatened. Because the truth is, real attraction isn't built through constant attention. It's built through selective indifference. A high-value man protects his energy like a fortress. He doesn't let curiosity turn into obsession, and he doesn't confuse interest with investment. If her attention is inconsistent, he remains consistent, not toward her, but toward his own direction. His time is not a reward for disrespect. It's a reflection of his focus. He understands that peace isn't something you find in women. It's something you maintain around them. That's why silence becomes his greatest weapon. It's not a tactic, it's a statement. I will not fight for space in someone else's chaos. And here's the paradox. The more he stays centered, the more her respect begins to return. Because women don't respect men who react, they respect men who regulate. They don't crave the ones who chase. They crave the ones who choose when to engage. The high-value man doesn't punish a woman for pulling away. He simply replaces her presence with purpose. That calm detachment unsettles her more than any argument could. It's the kind of quiet that makes her rethink every word, every move, every test. In the end, the man who chases validation always loses himself. But the man who guards his peace, he becomes the one everyone eventually wants access to because his silence isn't empty. It's expensive, and the woman who disrespects it will always pay the price through absence. Number 2, they never explain themselves to win. Respect themselves to win respect. A high-value man understands that respect isn't earned through justification. It's earned through presence. He knows that the moment you start explaining your value, you've already allowed someone else to sit in judgment of it. Most men fall into the trap of trying to reason their way back into respect. When a woman pulls away, disrespects boundaries, or treats them with indifference, they respond with words, long texts, emotional explanations, endless conversations that sound mature but feel desperate. They think clarity will fix the disconnect. But here's the truth. You can't talk someone into valuing you. You can only show them through your calmness what you'll no longer tolerate. Every time you explain yourself to win someone's respect, you're doing 2 things. You're lowering your position and you're teaching them that your worth is negotiable. Because the person who needs to explain why they deserve respect is subconsciously saying, I'll keep proving myself until you agree I'm enough. But a high-value man doesn't need agreement to know his value. He doesn't argue over his standards. He simply enforces them. If someone disrespects his time, he adjusts access. If someone questions his character, he lets their doubt live with them. He never fights for understanding because he knows that the people meant to respect him won't require persuasion. Explaining yourself drains your masculine energy because it puts you in the position of convincing instead of commanding. The high-value man speaks through boundaries, not essays. When he says no, he means it not as a threat, but as a form of self-respect. He doesn't chase closure because he understands that closure is not something given. It's something chosen. He accepts that not everyone deserves the full version of his truth. Some people only deserve the silence that follows their disrespect. That silence isn't arrogance, it's self-control. It's the quiet reminder that the man who explains less is always taken more seriously. Women subconsciously test men to see if their composure is real. They'll challenge your patience, question your intentions, or mock your calmness, not to destroy it, but to measure it. And every time you respond emotionally or over-explain, you confirm their doubts. But when you remain steady, when you simply state your boundary once and move forward without reaction, you shift the entire dynamic. Suddenly, she feels uncertainty not about your emotions, but about her influence over them. That uncertainty creates respect because it reminds her that your world doesn't revolve around her perception. The Stoic man never chases understanding because he doesn't need to be understood to stay grounded. His actions and energy carry weight. His silence carries finality. He knows that when a woman truly respects you, she doesn't need paragraphs. She reads your energy. The man who explains himself becomes predictable. The man who stands still becomes unforgettable. So the next time someone disrespects your peace and expects you to defend yourself, remember this truth. The moment you stop explaining, you start commanding. Respect isn't spoken, it's felt. And when your silence replaces your justification, that's when the world finally starts to listen. Number 3, they never stay. Where their effort isn't appreciated, they never stay where their effort isn't appreciated. A high-value man knows that energy is sacred. What he gives, his time, his focus, his consistency is never casual. Every message, every gesture, every small act of care carries intention. And because of that, he never keeps giving it to someone who treats it like background noise. Most men stay too long in situations where their effort is met with indifference. They believe that giving more will eventually earn appreciation. That loyalty will one day turn neglect into love. But that's not how human nature works. The more you do for someone who doesn't respect you, the more invisible your effort becomes. Familiarity blinds people. The extraordinary becomes ordinary when it's never challenged. That's why a high-value man never stays where he has to beg to be valued. When you continue to show up for someone who takes you for granted, you slowly erode your own sense of worth. You start questioning your standards, lowering your expectations, and normalizing disrespect. You confuse patience with self-betrayal. You tell yourself that staying means strength when in reality it's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of being alone. Fear of realizing how much of yourself you've lost in the process. But the Stoic man understands that absence is more powerful than presence when respect has died. Walking away doesn't mean you've given up. It means you refuse to let your energy feed something that's already starved of gratitude. Every time you pull away from a place where your value isn't seen, you create contrast. That contrast teaches her and yourself what your energy was truly worth. When your consistency disappears, she begins to feel what she never appreciated. The silence between your messages, the emptiness of your absence, the calm she once mistook for boredom. That's when understanding arrives. Not through your words, but through the echo you leave behind. Because nothing teaches appreciation like distance from what was dependable. A high-value man doesn't announce his exit. He doesn't argue about effort or demand recognition. He simply stops over-delivering where gratitude is missing. His silence is not revenge. It's reflection. It's the sound of self-respect closing the door behind him. And the beauty of that moment is this. The very effort that went unnoticed now becomes unforgettable. Because people only realize the value of consistency when it's gone. Staying where your energy isn't appreciated is like watering a plant that's already dead. It doesn't revive it. It just wastes your strength. The Stoic man would rather stand alone in peace than surrounded by people who drain him. His worth is not up for negotiation. He knows that love without respect becomes dependency and effort without appreciation becomes exhaustion. So when he feels unappreciated, he doesn't complain. He recalibrates. He shifts his focus back to his purpose, his growth, his mission. And in doing so, he becomes what every woman eventually regrets losing. The man who never begged to be seen, because his absence would always say what words never could. Never. Number 4, they never argue with disrespect. They never argue. With disrespect value, man understands that disrespect doesn't require reaction. It requires removal. When someone crosses a boundary, when they mock your words, raise their tone, or test your calm, the weak man debates. He tries to reason, to fix, to make them see his side. But the Stoic man doesn't waste his breath explaining dignity to those who've already chosen to ignore it. He knows that arguing with disrespect is like shouting into a storm. The noise only drowns your own strength. Instead, he lets silence and distance do what words never could. Reveal who truly holds the power. When you argue with disrespect, you step off your throne to wrestle in the mud with people who feed on chaos. You let emotion guide you. You let their tone dictate your value. You hand over your peace in exchange for the illusion of winning. But what do you really win when you lose control? Nothing. Because in that moment, you've already confirmed their belief that they can pull you out of balance. And that's the real victory they wanted. Not the argument itself, but the reaction. High value men don't give that satisfaction. They stay centered even when provoked. Their calmness under fire is what makes them unforgettable. You see, disrespect doesn't come out of nowhere. It's tested first. The sarcastic comment, the eye roll, the "you're too sensitive" after you express a boundary. The moment you argue, you validate that behavior. You show her that she can bait you into emotion. But when you stay silent, when you look once and walk away, the message lands much louder. You'll never get that version of me again. That's not pride, that's discipline. Because real men don't fight to be understood by people who enjoy misunderstanding them. Disrespect always tries to drag you down to its level, but a man who values his peace never lowers himself to prove a point. He understands that you can't control how people act, only how long you allow it around you. The Stoic man's weapon is composure. His armor is silence, and his strength lies in what he doesn't say. He doesn't raise his voice because his presence already carries weight. His withdrawal says everything the argument would have destroyed. And here's the irony. When you refuse to argue, the disrespected party always ends up respected. Because silence creates consequence. When she realizes you won't fight for her approval, when your calm exposes her immaturity, the power dynamic resets. She starts to feel small next to your restraint. That's the moment the argument dies. Not because you won, but because she lost access to your energy. A high-value man doesn't argue. He observes, decides, and detaches. He lets people reveal themselves once, and that's enough because repeating yourself to someone who doesn't respect you isn't communication. It's humiliation. So he walks away, not in anger, but in mastery, because nothing says you can't touch me louder than a man who refuses to fight for what no longer deserves his peace. Number 5, they never compromise. They never compromise self-respect for desire. Self-respect for desire. A high-value man understands that desire is powerful, but self-respect is sacred. He knows that no matter how beautiful she is, how magnetic her presence feels, or how deep the attraction runs, the moment he lowers his standards to keep her, he loses something far more valuable than her attention. He loses himself. The average man lets his desire override his discipline. He makes excuses for her bad behavior because he wants her approval more than his peace. He overlooks red flags because he's chasing a feeling, not a future. But the Stoic man operates differently. He's not ruled by impulse, he's guided by principle. His boundaries are not conditions, they're codes, and no amount of chemistry can make him betray them. Every man eventually meets a woman who tests his discipline. She'll flirt with inconsistency, disappear when she wants attention, or use her charm to blur his clarity. And in those moments, most men surrender. They give more, chase harder, and try to prove their worth through effort. But the high-value man pauses. He breathes. He watches because he knows that the fastest way to lose respect is to ignore your own intuition. He never sacrifices his self-worth just to stay close to someone who doesn't honor it. He understands that the thrill of desire fades, but the shame of self-betrayal lasts. The man who compromises his boundaries for beauty will always end up resenting himself, not her. Desire makes men impulsive. It blinds logic, silences wisdom, and turns patience into panic. But a disciplined man knows that control is the truest form of dominance. He doesn't chase the moment. He measures it. He doesn't beg for access. He grants it selectively. Because once you can say no to what tempts you, you become unstoppable. The world is full of men who will do anything for attention, but very few who can walk away from it. That's why restraint is so rare. It's also why it commands respect. When a woman senses that you desire her, but you're not controlled by that desire, she feels something she doesn't feel around weak men. Safety. Your calmness tells her you're not desperate for connection. You're choosing it, and that's the paradox. The less you chase, the more magnetic you become. The less you compromise, the more powerful your presence feels. Because women aren't drawn to the man who gives in. They're drawn to the man who holds back. The man whose silence speaks louder than any compliment. The man who looks her in the eye and says without words, "I want you, but I'll never lose myself for you." That sentence, unspoken yet undeniable, is what defines masculine strength. A high-value man knows that desire is fleeting, but dignity is permanent. Every time he walks away from a situation that asks him to shrink, he expands. Every time he chooses restraint over reaction, he earns another layer of peace. And that's the quiet victory of the Stoic man. Not that he denies his emotions, but that he refuses to let them decide who he becomes. Because the moment you let desire dictate your worth, you stop being a man of value and start being a man for sale. Number 6, they never beg for loyalty that should. They never beg for loyalty that should be freely given. A high-value man knows that loyalty isn't a gift you ask for. It's a reflection of the energy you inspire. When a woman truly respects you, loyalty flows naturally. You don't have to demand it, prove yourself for it, or monitor her behavior to ensure it. But when loyalty must be begged for, the connection is already poisoned. The moment you have to ask someone to stay, to commit, or to act right, you've already confirmed that they were never truly there. Loyalty loses its meaning when it's earned through fear or guilt. That's why the Stoic man never begs for it. He simply creates a life that attracts those capable of giving it. Most men beg for loyalty because they're afraid of being replaced. They sense her detachment, see the mixed signals, and think that pleading, reasoning, or doing more will somehow restore what's fading. But a high-value man doesn't cling to what's leaving. He doesn't chase what's unsure. He understands that loyalty built on obligation collapses under temptation. Real loyalty isn't about control. It's about conviction. It's not about watching someone. It's about knowing you don't have to. That's the difference between a man who leads and a man who fears. One trusts in his energy, the other doubts his worth. When a woman sees that you'll tolerate betrayal, inconsistency, or disrespect just to keep her, her admiration dies. She might stay for convenience, but she'll never stay for respect. Because loyalty that's begged for isn't love, it's leverage. It turns connection into negotiation. And every time you overlook disloyalty, you teach her that your boundaries are flexible, that your need for her is greater than your need for self-respect. The high-value man never teaches that lesson. He knows that loyalty without integrity is illusion. And he refuses to settle for illusions no matter how comforting they feel. Loyalty must come from choice, not coercion. It should be rooted in admiration, not obligation. The Stoic man never tries to convince anyone to be loyal. He simply observes who is. When loyalty fades, he doesn't argue or explain. He withdraws. Because his loyalty is sacred and he expects it to be reciprocated with the same intention. When he gives it, he gives fully, but once it's broken, he never rebuilds it out of desperation. His silence becomes the boundary that disloyal people can't cross again. And here's the beauty. When you stop begging for loyalty, you start attracting it. When you stop tolerating half-hearted energy, you create space for people who bring full-hearted presence. Loyalty flows to the man who no longer fears solitude. Because when you're not afraid to be alone, you become impossible to manipulate. The world may test you with betrayal, but it can't control you with it. The high-value man understands this final truth. Loyalty can't be forced, bought, or begged. It must be inspired. And the man who lives by principle instead of pressure will never struggle to find people who respect him. Because loyalty always gravitates towards strength and disappears the moment it senses weakness. They never stay silent. When their boundaries are crossed. Number 7, they never stay silent when their boundaries are crossed. A high-value man knows that silence can be power. But when it comes to his boundaries, silence becomes permission. He understands that peace is not maintained by ignoring disrespect, but by confronting it with composure. Weak men avoid confrontation because they confuse calm with passivity. They stay silent, hoping things will fix themselves, hoping people will get the message. But people rarely get the message you never deliver. The Stoic man doesn't explode when someone crosses his line. He states it firmly and clearly, and if it's crossed again, he removes himself completely. He doesn't fight for control. He enforces peace through consequence. Boundaries are not walls, they're mirrors. They show others how you see yourself. If your boundaries are weak, inconsistent, or easily broken, you reveal that you value connection more than self-respect. And once a woman senses that, the dynamic changes forever. She may still like you, but she will never admire you the same way again. Because women don't respect men who tolerate what they claim to reject. Every time you stay silent after disrespect, you train her. You show her that your comfort matters less than her approval. And once you do that, your authority is gone. The high-value man speaks calmly but decisively. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't explain. He simply makes it known that his time, energy, and peace are not open for negotiation. When he says no, it's final. When he says enough, he means it, and that tone, that balance of calm and certainty carries more weight than any argument ever could. It's not about being dominant or controlling. It's about being self-possessed. A man who knows what he stands for never needs to raise his voice to be heard. His consistency speaks louder than his emotions. When you let disrespect slide, you pay for it later, in resentment, confusion, and lost attraction. But when you address it the first time, with calm certainty, you restore balance. Because setting boundaries isn't about controlling others. It's about communicating your value. It's telling the world, this is what it costs to have access to me. And that message, once delivered with conviction, changes how people treat you forever. A high-value man doesn't over-explain his boundaries because he knows they're not up for debate. His peace is his standard, his silence is intentional, but his voice, when used, carries truth. When he says no, it's not rejection, it's protection. When he walks away, it's not drama, it's discipline. That's why his presence commands respect long after he's gone. Because people remember the man who didn't need anger to be strong and didn't need words to be understood. Boundaries don't push people away. They filter the wrong ones out. The Stoic man isn't loud about them. He's consistent with them. And that consistency is what separates him from the rest. He knows that when you stay silent about what hurts you, you don't look strong, you look accessible. But when you calmly stand firm, you don't just protect your peace, you define your worth. Because in the end, every boundary you set isn't a line in the sand. It's a reflection in the mirror reminding you of who you truly are. At the end of everything, the conclusion's silence, the restraint, the self-control. The high-value man lives by one unshakable code. Never trade your self-respect for connection. He's learned that peace is more valuable than validation, that dignity lasts longer than desire, and that not everyone deserves access to the best parts of him. He understands that the world will test his patience. Women will test his balance, and life will test his consistency. But a man who masters himself can't be moved by the opinions or emotions of others. He doesn't measure his worth by who stays or who leaves. He measures it by how calmly he remains himself through it all. A high-value man doesn't chase. He attracts through direction. He doesn't beg for love. He embodies it through presence. He doesn't compete with other men. He competes with his yesterday. Every boundary, every pause, every no he's learned to say is not an act of arrogance, but of clarity, because he knows that a man without standards becomes a man without identity. And the moment you lose who you are, you lose the respect of everyone around you. This code isn't built from theory. It's written in experience. It's written in the quiet moments after betrayal, in the empty silence after overgiving, in the hard lesson of realizing that love without respect will always turn into control. Every high-value man has been there. The moment he realized that no amount of effort could make someone see his worth, that was the breaking point. But it was also the awakening, because once you stop trying to convince others to respect you, you start to move like a man who already does. The Stoic man lives differently. His emotions don't vanish. He just refuses to let them dictate his direction. He still feels, still cares, still desires, but he never abandons himself in the process. He doesn't need to be cold to be strong. He just understands the difference between kindness and weakness. His love has boundaries, his time has meaning, and his silence has purpose. That's what makes his energy rare in a world addicted to noise. And the paradox is this: when you live by this code, you stop losing people and start filtering them. The ones who can't respect your peace fall away, and the ones who value it rise to meet you. You stop chasing connection and start inspiring it. You become the calm in chaos, the steady presence that others seek but can't fully understand because they feel it. The quiet strength of a man who's mastered himself. In the end, being a high-value man isn't about dominance or status. It's about alignment, mind, emotion, and action working as one. It's about walking away from anything that costs your self-respect. Because the moment you protect your peace above all else, you've already won. That is the code. The code of the Stoic man, the code of respect. If you're ready to take your dating life to the next level, my full online course is waiting for you. It's packed with powerful strategies you won't find on YouTube, and it's available in English and Spanish. Click the link in the description and start mastering the game today. See you in the next video.